Oh, okay, well done. So you are the one to learn. They all know everything. So you listen. So we now moved into mostly the control buildings. But there is even better information coming from the Cultural Association and from science papers that have been written in recent times. During the COVID years, we call it now the COVID years, the COVID years, there was a lot of scientific work done because nobody could go anywhere. So we have a lot of new papers, a lot of science and details for us. What I noticed here is every single district, you have some great papers telling you what are the pathogens. Because this is an important factor. There is no chemistry or product, even poison, whatever they tell you, can kill every pathogen that is attacking the farm with the same dilution, the same contact, on the same surface. One chemistry can do everything. Even on our pack, we say broad spectrum. It's broad, but it's not potent on each product. So it's something to remember when we're thinking about the different challenges. And also we use the nice vaccines, but there's a new IV strain not responding to the vaccine. And this is coming in several countries. So it means the biosecurity is even more important than it was previously perhaps. I know you understand the biosecurity, so I won't go into that in specific details, but what we look at when we look at biosecurity, not just the prevention of disease. With the Neogen peroxide super and some other chemistries available, we can reduce pathogen pressure during production. So it can be a reactionary way of reducing the pathogens complementary to antibiotic use if you're using antibiotics. So reducing pathogen pressure below infectious levels, we will look at that a little bit, but of course, then we have all the vaccines available these days. When we think of biosecurity, so cleaning and disinfection. But you have the rodent control, you have the fly control, you have the beetle control. You even have gecko control, which we don't have much of in people, to be honest. Vehicles, seasonal. You've got the hypoxemia as you get closer and closer to the yellow bird, less oxygen in the air, challenges from the season. And I was in Karachi and they said it doesn't rain in Karachi. You have to explain that to the driver because we went through swimming pools to get from the airport to the hotel on Monday morning. A lot of rain, a lot of humidity. So the seasons are not the same as they used to be. And of course the people and the visitors. As I mentioned, from an Neogen perspective, we look at the genetics on that side. And we can review later in the week and we'll look at what we've been doing with them, hoping to get more into the Avigen side. But we really, from our animal safety point of view and the DMG point of view, we're looking at preventative end of production cycle, so end of the flock, plus reducing pathogen pressure. And that is what our focus really is. In the room today, I know there are breeder farmers and broiler farmers and layer farmers. You don't all have the same pathogen challenge. You don't all have the same length of production. You might have 16 weeks and then you're changing the pullets. You might have 1 year. You might have 40 days. Everybody is slightly different. So an integrated practice can't necessarily use the same protocol for all of these challenges. You will have different pathogens, different vaccines on these different flocks. When you look at chemistry, there's a lot of information online. You can look at quaternimoniums, you can look at glutaraldehydes, iodines, phenols, monopersulfate, Neogen peroxide super, hydrogen peroxides. We have all the chemistries available. But it isn't just about the chemistry. We have to formulate. We have to have chelators because hard water in Pakistan, depending where you are in Pakistan, but it can be up to 3,000 ppm, I understood. And we retested for that on Dr. Saddam's advice. You have different surfaces, heat, surfaces drying very fast. Some chemistry takes 30 minutes to kill. Some chemistry takes 5 minutes to kill. So it isn't as simple as looking at the chemistry and saying, okay, that will do. You need to have the data and the support to be able to understand which chemistry we can work. If you look at the pathogen, It's a very nice picture, very pleasing picture. Mycoplasma, gram-positive, gram-negative, fungus, protozoa, non-envelope virus, envelope virus. There is not a single product that we sell or that you could buy that kills all those pathogens with the same dilution and the same contact time. So if you have a combination of pathogens, we discuss what those pathogens are, which I will go into. Then we decide which is the best chemistry, not the best product. Then we can work out, do you need even 2 disinfections, which you do for coccidiosis as an example. You might for adenovirus as an example. So it's really quite easy to see from there how difficult this could be, because we have no membranes, pH sensitive, everything is slightly different. So the veterinarians have a study of this, but it's balancing it with the chemistry. And that's where the DMG team and obviously ourselves, we can help. Because you need to understand what is the target pathogen. If you buy the product, it says broad spectrum, okay, this is going to kill everything. Not true. It's broad, but it's not total. It's not total spectrum. So how do you make a list? To understand the pathogen on your farm, could be layer, breeder, or broiler, what is the vaccination policy? Normally it's different for each of those farms. If you are investing in a vaccine, it means you are expecting that pathogen, that virus normally, there are some bacteria as well, but that virus to attack your farm. Otherwise, why spend the money? So therefore, you're expecting, if you're giving a vaccine, there could be some virus titer even in the litter. So between the crop, you must use a chemistry that inactivates those virus. This is top of the list. When we think about the chemistry, we will balance what chemistry works with which pathogen, and you must engage your team. There's no point we sit here and we devise a program, we give it to the working guy, and the working guy goes out there, glug, 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 glug. This is your money. We need to design the protocol and do the training so that we kill the pathogen economically with a return on investment. The pathogens I mentioned, most difficult and least difficult. Not resistant, it means difficult. So when we think about the protozoa, the coccidiosis, this is a very robust protozoa. The same chemistry does not inactivate protozoa easily that inactivates envelope virus, which are easy. So you really have to look at what is the challenge. If you don't have coccidiosis problems, great, because your choices are much greater, because there's less chemistry that can inactivate the coccidiosis. So let's have a look at how we get the list. As I mentioned, the vaccine. Just put the vaccine, whatever that virus is. The next is the diagnostics. So this is the main job of the veterinarian, of course, in the farm. What was the challenge in the last 2 flocks? Not the last flock, the last 2 flocks, because you could have a trend of challenge. If you have a trend of challenge, what it means, potentially there's a vertical transmission, let's hope not, or we didn't inactivate the pathogen between this crop and the next crop, because you got the same thing again. So it wasn't, did the worker do the job? Yes. We did the cleaning, we did the swabs, the bacterial swabs, got 80% cleaning efficacy, great. Disinfected, still the challenge. So did we use the right chemistry? Did we make the right investment? This is the diagnostics. Of course, you have some very highly populated areas where your neighbor may not be quite as good at biosecurity as you are. And you can get some bioaerosols and some challenge. And of course, you have the seasonal. Seasonal, not just about summer-winter, but summer-winter really is a big factor. When I've been in Pakistan before, you have more respiratory challenge in 2 times of the year. And this is normally around climatic challenges. So it's really forming the list. With that list, working with the DMG team, with ourselves, designing a protocol for that cycle, for that pathogen. And it won't be the same for broilers, layers, and breeders. You will have differences. We know that.
Please come back to the previous slide. सर इसमें ज़रा इसको देख के बताइएगा कि कोई और ऐसा फैक्टर है जो हमें अपना पैथोजन कंट्रोल प्रोग्राम स्पेसिफिकली फॉर डिसइंफेक्शन बायोसिक्योरिटी जिस फैक्टर को आप समझते हैं कि हमें उसको भी कंसीडर करना चाहिए। आपकी एक्सपर्ट ओपिनियन इस पे क्या है? मतलब उसने सारे लिस्ट किए हैं, कोई फैक्टर उसने स्किप किया है कि जो उसने यहाँ पे मेंशन नहीं किया? तो वो कह रहा है अपनी अपनी वैक्सीनेशन देखें, पहले क्या चैलेंज आया उसको देखें, आपके नेबर में क्या चल रहा है उसको आप देखेंगे, सीजनल रिस्क जो है उसको आप जो है वो फॉरवर्ड पार करेंगे। कोई ऐसी चीज जो इसने स्किप की हो?
ठीक है?
ठीक है।
Yep. Then we have, this is just a list of viruses for an example. I started with adenovirus because in the UK these days we're having quite a big challenge with this, but reoviruses, Gumboro, these are all non-envelope virus to here. Then we have envelope virus. What is very specific, the non-envelope virus have a much more stable pH. So you really need to have an acid or an alkaline to inactivate those quickly. You can activate them with neutral pH chemistries like quaternaries, glutaraldehydes, but it takes a longer time. The thing about adenovirus is survives 35 to 40 days on plastic. So what do you have that's plastic? Feeder pan, plastic. Waterline, plastic. So when you're disinfecting these areas, they are what we would say are non-porous inside the foam. So you spray, the water drops off, the solution drops off. Do you have enough contact time for that inactivation of the adenovirus? You will for the envelope virus. So we're always thinking about avian influenza, Newcastle, infectious bronchitis. True, they are very challenging. Even in the UK, DEFRA test only against those pathogen in virus. Yes, they're damaging, but they are easy to inactivate because they have a very short stability. 6 to 6.5 pH means they are easy to inactivate. We can easily challenge those, but not necessarily the same with the non-envelope. So it's very important we look at which is the challenge. We think about mycoplasma. These are just some simple studies. I always put the references, but how long they survive outside the host. So mycoplasma is particularly difficult for quaternary pneumonium to overcome. So again, we have to look at the pathogen to understand which chemistry. I mentioned quaternary pneumonium there twice because it's not as good against, bless you, non-envelope virus or mycoplasma, but it's very good against fungus and gram-positive bacteria. So Enterococcus, Staphylococcus. So you really have to understand what this list is. The temperature I don't think matters as much as it does in other countries, but I took the different areas. Still, in Lahore, November to March, morning and evening is cool. So if you're using glutaraldehyde and quaternary ammonium compound, don't use it early morning or evening, middle of the day. Make your disinfection middle of the day when at least you have the heat. Because when we look at this slide, glutaraldehyde needs 20 degrees plus. Quaternary ammonium needs 20 degrees plus to give the full effect. So I'm going to come back to it, so don't worry. If I go backwards, I'll come back. So really think about the time of disinfection. The chemistry works, no problem, but do it at the right time of day, just as a tip. So I leave it on here so you can do your photo if you want to. It's fine. And these are quite accurate studies. This is what we generally know about chemistry. When I'm in Islamabad on Friday, it's worse for them. They have a longer, cooler period, even in the daytime sometimes. In the winter, it doesn't get very warm. So we have to think about perhaps phenolic chemistries in those times. They also have to think about residual chemistry. Residual chemistry means we spray a non-porous surface, doesn't matter, porous, semi-porous, so concrete, wood. A lot of concretes. These are proven to be, this is quaternary ammonium, the chemistry stays in the pores of this concrete. Whenever there is moisture, you have a lot of humidity, there is bacteriostatic action. This is good. So this means you have long acting. So this is one of the reasons why we really think about two types of chemistry when we're recommending in our programs, because we want to have residual chemistry. Residual chemistry will be glutaraldehyde, quaternary ammonium, phenol, iodine. These are all residual chemistries. Carry on acting in a semi-porous or porous surface. Non-residual, as the Neogen peroxide super, you apply, it dries, it's gone. In Europe, they love it because that means it's biodegradable. So we can use it, going to the question before, we can use that in organic farms because there is no traceability at all of that chemistry. What is good, it's very fast. So we can use it to have a knockdown of the virus, let the surface dry, and then use a second chemistry. And that is the reason why. So when you think about, if you think about using more than one chemistry, always use non-residual first, residual second. Otherwise, there's a compatibility issue. Shukran. For us, for DMG, we have the full range of chemistries available, except hydrogen peroxide. We don't export hydrogen peroxide for specific reasons. To be honest, it's volatile chemistry, and it can be used in a way that it shouldn't be used for, and so Neogen doesn't use it as an export chemistry. You can buy it locally, I think. But we have iodines, we have glutaraldehyde quaternary, so ViraQuat 300. Nice, it's best in class, actually. It's the top performing glutaraldehyde quaternary ammonium. Then we have quaternary ammonium glutaraldehyde, quite different. This one would be for hatchery, for example. We don't want too much glutaraldehyde in the hatchery, so it's only 7%, and you use 1 to 250, so very low glutaraldehyde content, so that the worker in the hatchery doesn't get exposed, but 4 different quaternary ammoniums to overcome aspergillus, fungus, and the bacteria. And then, of course, we have the black extreme, and DMG now have the new farm fluid just coming through as well. And of course, Neogen peroxide super. So when we're looking at a program, it'll really be about which of these is best for which pathogen, not, which is the best to sell. It's for us, which is the best looking at the pathogen. Whenever you're using more than one chemistry, as I mentioned, always use non-residual before residual. That's all that slide does in a long way of saying it, because quaternary ammoniums are cationic surfactant. In Neogen peroxide super, we have anionic surfactant. These will interact. They will reduce your investment. So always non-residual before residual. Okay, some basics. As I mentioned before, you're all a very experienced team, one learning, everybody else very experienced. So you know about the barrier controls. One thing we've been doing quite a lot more recently is we use a lot of agricultural lime on the walkways to change the pH of the environment. It's not expensive, especially if you've got wild birds coming through over biosecurity fencing. They can defecate on the ground. The virus survives, can be walked. Even if you have a good foot dip, could be walked into the house. So we use a lot of agricultural lime, just basically changing the environment. Not expensive, not the chemistry we sell, but the chemistry we do recommend. When we're thinking about vehicles, if you have wheel dips, ideally they should be covered. I did see a wheel dip today, open. The only chemistry that works with direct sunlight is phenol chemistry. No other chemistry works in direct sunlight because it degrades with the UV light, except the phenol chemistry. So if you do have this type of a system, cover it. If you have sprays are okay, but they need to be fast-acting chemistry because this is a non-porous vertical surface. We spray, it runs off. But what exactly are we trying to kill on a vehicle? Normally it's envelope virus. So not too damaging. We can't think about, we're not killing coccidiosis on a vehicle. We're not trying to get non-envelope virus. So it's normally Newcastle, maybe IB, AI. So we can do it. But you need to try and think about using the faster acting chemistries. And especially as I mentioned in the foot dips and in the wheel dips, we're using the robust phenol chemistry. This will last 1-2 days without derogation, but don't forget you might get evaporation, you might need to top up if it's in direct sunlight. But my advice, wherever you can, cover it. The workers, of course, whatever system you have, they're all different. We make sure the worker comes in. One of the good ways that we've found to train the worker to make sure they do the proper shower in, shower out, we explain them we are protecting your family, not the other way around. Because Salmonella is zoonotic, coccidiosis could potentially be even zoonotic, protozoa can carry home. There's so many zoonotic challenges inside the farm, so we say to the worker, do this, it protects your family. Then they're more likely to do the job very nicely. And again, outdoor foot dip, robust chemistry, indoor foot dip, Neogen peroxide super. Very simple protocols. Cleaning and disinfection. This is the main task. I think everybody here understands the value of cleaning. Is correct? You understand we have to clean before we disinfect. Okay, good. Because cleaning is 80% of the effort. When you look at the data, if you have product approved in USA, EPA data, it means achieve 3.75 log only for approval. In UK, 5 log. In EN tests, 4 and 5 log. So actually the easiest test to pass is the EPA test because they only require 3.75. So it means to get down to this level, you've got to clean very well. Otherwise, the disinfection is not going to work as well as you think. It doesn't cover organic challenge. The only chemistry that really covers organic challenge, so say for example, I've only got 5 days, I normally have 12 days. I need to clean. The clean won't be as good as possible. That's when you have to use, salam alaikum. Yeah, that's when you have to use the phenol chemistry because you didn't do such a good cleaning job. So cleaning, hugely important. Then rinsing. In the layer farm, you have to rinse twice, not once. Because when you rinse, you atomize the dirt everywhere. Sorry, sound effects for you. So you atomize the dirt everywhere. So a second rinse, make sure this goes away. Also in the breeder farms, you can use testing from ATP tests, swab tests. You might have your own laboratories. Checking the cleaning, if good, then we have the disinfection. For us, we're using a Sure Clean detergent because that's an alkaline. But as I mentioned, be careful. If it's an EPA tested disinfectant, try to look for EN testing or DEFRA testing as well, because that's a higher grade. We know the value of cleaning. Sorry, that's a very basic slide because I do some presentations where they still clean only with water. So I normally have to explain, how did you shower this morning? Then they realize, okay, I should be using soap. Good. Cleaning with detergent, engage a formulated detergent. So you're going to have at least 2-3 surfactants. So water-loving and dirt-loving surfactants to lift the dirt, take it away, and potentially a solvent as well. And there's a lot of work being done in Pakistan on trying to improve that across everywhere. You can have on YouTube, Control Shed Washing Cleaning in Pakistan. 2020, lovely presentation, easy to do. So cleaning is all there, creating habits. We want to get to this level, foaming on a nice detergent, rinsing it off, ready for disinfection. Is everybody doing that? Yes. I mean, nobody's going to put their hand up and say, no, I'm not doing that. But what I mean is just make sure that that's the basis. These are all pictures, obviously, from Pakistan. One thing to think about, though, is these guys should be wearing a bit more protection. We have glasses, so we're okay. But they should be wearing, because it splatters, and then the chemistry can come in your eyes. So think about that when you're doing the team. And we have to remove the biofilm. I think you understand biofilm very well. It's forming a layer. So this polysaccharide layer, you cannot break it with water. You have to use a detergent, so alkaline preferably, breaking that through, opening this biofilm so we can use a disinfectant. This is just about which chemistry to use. Acid for the lime scale, which could be in the cooling pad. Lime scale could be in the hatchery. And you could get a little bit around the drinkers, but that's only going to be a once-a-year job. Most of the time, you're going to be using the alkaline cleaners. And proven, if you use a pre-soak, then the detergent, proven by chemistry to save 40% of time, 40% of water. Of course, labor here is not too expensive, but water is, until yesterday, is in short supply sometimes. So think about the actual science behind that. It's not just a question of something that you have to do. So if we've got a nice clean surface, we're going to think about disinfecting. Most of the time, in my experience, people use 1, maybe 2 disinfectants. They use a spray disinfectant, then they set the house, and maybe a second disinfectant for thermal fog. This is normally the process. This works very nicely in the general hygiene. So for us, we would use the glutaraldehyde quaternary, the disinfection, as I said, best in class, the number 1 on DEFRA testing, Viroquat, or Black Extreme. We would use one or the other, and maybe in rotation. I don't personally think we can get a bacterial resistance in a broiler house, but some literature says it's possible, some literature says it's not possible. I think if you clean something every 8 to 10 weeks, resistance is unlikely. In the hatchery, maybe, but in the broiler, unlikely. But in case, we can do the rotation. And then the option is to do a thermal fog with a glutaraldehyde quaternary compound. You might use formalin. Formalin is also okay. It's cheaper, generally speaking, but it's only an aldehyde. It doesn't have the quaternary balance in it. And what really nice when you do a fogging is you don't just get the residual in the concrete on the floor, the fogging will give you residual in the ceiling. Because when anybody is disinfecting the shed, they go like this, but most of the time it's here. Not so much here. And generally the pressure is less for the ceiling than it is for the ground. The fogging gets a nice cover. So now, up to 10 days of residual activity in the ceiling, this helps the broiler flock, because don't forget, the maternal antibodies are lasting 10 days and then all of a sudden, not there. The brain of the chicken is formed at 10 days. So around this 10-day period, you put on the ventilation, day 10, day 12. So you circulate the air. So if we've got this bacteriostatic layer in the ceiling, we will reduce that contamination. So this is one of the formal reasons for the fogging. And you're not exactly sure about the litter, especially rice husks. Sometimes up, sometimes down, sometimes good, sometimes not so good, and then we might do this. Another example could be a coccidiosis challenge. If we have a coccidiosis challenge, Viroxid super doesn't kill coccidiosis. Glutaraldehyde quaternary does not kill the protozoa. So we then think about the phenol chemistry. So if we're thinking about the phenol chemistry, will it kill everything else as well? Potentially, but you exhaust the chemistry. So this one with Neogen farm fluid, we would need a 2% concentration to kill Acervulina, Tenella, and Maxima. We tested it on all those 3 protozoa strains, 100% effective at 2% concentration. But if we don't put something to get rid of the bacteria and the virus first, we are exhausting the capacity of this product. So we recommend the first disinfection with 0.5% of Neogen Viroxide super, get rid of the adenovirus, get rid of all the envelope viruses, most of the bacterias, then let it dry only, same day, apply the Neogen farm fluid. So 2 products in 1 day. You don't waste time, but you do make a second investment. But you have a better chance of killing the coccidiosis. And if you have a virus challenge. Again, if there's just a virus outbreak, we could just use Viroxide super plus Viroquat. Because Viroquat is really a good chemistry, the glutaraldehyde quaternary. But does it do the adenovirus type product quickly? No, it takes time. And remember, that is surviving on plastic. So go back again to your diagnostics. if you had the same problem, one flock and then the second flock, or even 3 flocks in a row, something is not working. This is the time to think about, should we make a change? Layer flocks, normally we just use a glutaraldehyde quaterniumonium, but again, if you had a virus challenge, think about the Veroxide Super. It has to be first, because this is a 2.5 to 3.2 pH, and most of the cages could be a little bit soft metal on the joints, so we have to make sure we use a second chemistry so we don't get any corrosive activity from that oxidative chemistry. And you could, again, of course, do the thermal fog. Those are not set in stone, those are just examples. Because, as I said before, we have to know what the pathogen is before we can make the recommendation. I tried to think of a simile for Pakistan, so please bear with me. You might hate it, you might love it, I don't know. But don't throw anything, okay? So I'm a cricket fan. I used to play cricket for the England B team when I was younger. So I thought to myself, what is the way in Pakistan? Pakistan normally love cricket. Anybody here hate cricket? Okay, good. So we're halfway there, okay. So we have to prepare the surface. So in my idea, this is the wicket. So we're using cleaning. Get the wicket ready, we don't want bumps. If you want to bowl out the English, you need a flat pitch, fast bowlers. So what we normally have here, the fast bowler can get rid of maybe 6, 7 wickets, but not all. So first disinfection, fast bowler. The best fast bowler I used to know when I was growing up is Mr. Akram. So he is going to get you 6, 7 wickets, and we're back in the Lord's Stadium, maybe 30, 40 runs, that's it. On a good day for you. But he didn't get all of the wickets, never. He never got 10, in my experience. Maybe you have an experience where he did, but generally speaking, not. And then you have this character. Mushtaq come on with a spin ball, he get everybody else. This is the second disinfection. So if we're doing coccidiosis, we're using Neogen Veroxide Super, and then we're using the farm fluid to make sure that we kill the coccidiosis and everything else. Because we've got rinse, dry, apply, just dry and apply. So that can happen the same day, because this is non-residual and this is residual. So please excuse the simile, but I'm trying to get the message. First disinfection, second disinfection for a specific problem, not necessarily all the time. Okay. Next question I have recently. The biofilm in the water pipes. How do you know you have the biofilm in the water pipe? You can have these tools. I brought one here just so you can see, but they're a very simple tool. We just connect on here. At the end of this tool, we have a camera. The camera goes in the pipe, round the bend, and you get the picture on here. You can see if you have the biofilm or not. But also you can see, did I get rid of the biofilm or not? That's the more important thing. Then basically we have in our portfolio, we're using the Neogen Veroxide Super at 1% to work on this challenge. So the Neogen Veroxide Super at 1% in the waterline, 4 hours, removes the biofilm. And this is proven on, I'll show you a slide in a moment. But that's if you do it every cycle. You can flush during the cycle, but you have to raise the waterline so that the birds are not there at 1%, 1 to 100. We can remove the biofilm. It's quite easy to do. You mix up the solution, leave it in there for 1 hour. You can buy a similar piece of equipment. Unfortunately, that's about $100. You can get one on Amazon. Do you have Amazon here?
Yeah.
$34. It goes on the phone. So you don't need to spend that sort of money. So you can have a look inside the pipe. It's really important, the biofilm, because if you're using vitamin electrolyte, using vaccine, using medication, especially tylosin leaves a scum, which is very easy to get the biofilms. This is a picture of a small video of biofilm in the pipe. Floating, build up in the pipe. And then This is after peroxide super at 1%, 4 hours. But we did this quite regularly with this water line. What you can see with the, you can't. That's the nipple drinker, obviously. You see how clean that is, one to the other, because we have the tool to check. But if you see the biofilm is still there, you might need to repeat if you didn't do it well the first time. But once you get it done, this is what you want to see. You don't want to see biofilm. We don't want to remove biofilm during the cycle, unless we raise the water line with a pipe going outside the house. Otherwise, the biofilm is going in the bird or blocking the nipple. So we only want to remove at the end of the cycle. So we clean and disinfect. You did a good job, but you still got a challenge. So what we call this is the pathogen pressure. It could be what we call a trend. A trend means every flock, day 12, you had a spike in mortality. Every single flock. It means there's a trend of challenge. It's the end of the maternal antibodies. It could be a time when we have to think about some pathogen pressure reduction. Could be the same time as you use immunosuppressive vaccines. Could be anything like that. Or there's a flock challenge. This one is really quite bad. Normally we can go in the house, maybe we get a... Now you have to think, is that IB? Is that Mycoplasma? Is that Newcastle? Okay, it's Mycoplasma. But really you should do diagnosis. You shouldn't rely on a stupid vet making noises. You do the diagnostics. Or it could be when you do flock thinning, if you do that. Causing stress, it could be the heat and it could be your lack of oxygen as we get in the higher end people and all those things. So there are challenges. We can be reactionary. So the first time you got the snotty nose, apply Neogen peroxide super in the presence of the birds while the vet is making the diagnostics. You can't harm the birds. I'll show you in a moment a trial. You can't harm the birds. All you can do is reduce the cross-contamination. So this is really giving you a benefit. It's not a treatment. It can be done at the same time as antibiotics in the water line. It won't affect the birds. It's really there to try and reduce the cross-contamination. If I show you this picture, I'm sorry it's quite blurred at the back, that is how much dust is floating around in the broiler house. As you can see, this is birds around 7-8 days. This was about 9 o'clock in the morning, so they're still quite active moving around. That's how much dust. Those are potentially what we call bioaerosol. So if there's a come out of the bird, it's here, and now it's here, and it's here, it's over here. So by misting in the presence of the birds, we can reduce the pressure. We can't stop the problem. You still need the diagnostics. You might use tylosin or something else. Whatever challenge has been, diagnosed, going back to whether it's Mycoplasma. There's a thing in the UK now called CRD, chronic respiratory disease. I think that's a lazy diagnosis. It means they don't know whether it's Newcastle, Mycoplasma, or IB. So they just put CRD. It's like, it's good for me because I just say, okay, then we don't know what it is, let's go. This is what we call reactionary. Simply what we do is we have the knapsack sprayer. We go in the house, 2 meters above the bird. It should be around 2 meters because what we want is about 2 minutes descent. Because we have proven at the 1 in 200 dilution, we need a 1 minute contact time to inactivate the virus. So if we can have a 2 minute contact time, even better. So this needs to be 35 to 50 micron. So you set it on a coarse setting so that we get the spray and the weight so it drops. This is particularly in the younger birds. As the birds get older and we start putting on the ventilation, this may not work as well because you're going to have cross ventilations. So this is really for the first 10 to 12
Is
days.
there any formula, guideline, how to measure that microns? Because
There is. Funny enough, I can do it because I have a hairy arm. So when you put your arm in the spray, if you see the droplet on the hair, this is about 30 micron. If you can't see the droplet, it's too small. This is not very scientific, okay? So this is done by Ijiba. You can do it on, you make a spray in the air, put cardboard on the ground, and you time this cardboard getting wet. No birds, obviously, around. It takes 135 seconds for 50 micron to reach the ground. So we know if it's just under 2 minutes, it's about a 35, 40 micron. So that's quite a practical way to test. And this is obviously from the company that sells this type of equipment. For me, because we're using Neogen peroxide super, which is non-harmful to the human, I just put my arm out. Yeah, you need to adjust the setting. But as they said, don't try this at home, as they say on television. But yes, so we're looking at 1 in 200 dilution. We might do it twice a day. As I said, very effective in the young birds. We do have people using it in older birds, but mostly effective in the younger birds. Again, the doctor can share the data with you. This was a trial we actually did in Malaysia because Malaysia has quite a humid atmosphere. We wanted to try and simulate. Don't spray on the bird. It won't harm them, but it's a waste because there's no contact time with the bioaerosol. We want to do the bioaerosols. So that's the way to do it, as we would explain. And in our trial, we make, throughout the flock, we sacrifice 5 birds, 5 birds, 5 birds, 5 birds, and we're checking oculars, larynx, tracheas. The veterinarian that did the trial, taking all the photos, no harm at all to the birds. There was a benefit, but that wasn't the purpose of the trial. The trial was to prove no harmful challenge. The second time when we have this aerial spread, you may not have it here as much. This is an example that was showed to us by a company in Egypt. They allow me to share because we are sharing company. They are also sharing. So they had infectious bronchitis in one farm. The other farms are only sort of about 1.5 kilos apart. They're in the desert, in the middle of nowhere. You can't imagine, why do we get any challenge? It takes almost a day and a half to drive there. And the road is a bit like Karachi. It's very holes and you need 4x4 and swimming, everything is there. Even the fog is there in the morning. But they got, this is the prevailing wind direction. The same infectious bronchitis came in 2 more farms. And on the ELISA kit, we prove it's the same. No worker go from here to here. No vehicle go from here to here. So it's the aerial transmission. We know infectious bronchitis can travel 1-2 kilometers. Even more information we have, because obviously that's a coronavirus. Since the COVID work, we know how much the aerial spread. Even the WHO now said that that is an aerial spread of the bioaerosols. So how could we actually help control that? We work with them. They do the trials actually through the cooling pad. They take the sample before the pad, they take the sample after the pad. And they prove that using through the circulatory system, they were actually able to stop the challenges coming into the farm. Of course, the air is coming through here. Sorry, me again, sorry. High velocity. So you might think, how is that possible? Possible because the pad is like this. So the air is definitely going straight, 100% agree. But the pad is set up like this. So the bioaerosol, it means there's a virus or a bacteria attached to a dust. That's called a bioaerosol. The pad is wet. This touches the pad, stays on the pad, inactivated. So that's why the reading, the other side of the pad was negative. This is not for everybody to do all the time. This is only, might be if there's a neighbor with a challenge on the same farm, you might have a challenge. Harvest time. Harvest, we've seen a lot of aspergillus traveling in the air. Combining crops very close to the farms. This is the time to do it. Through this sump, it has to be a circulatory system. And don't forget, every day, you're going to use a volume of water. So the first day we put in 1 in 200. Then we measure by the float valve how much extra water was entering. We add more Neogen peroxide super to keep it at 1 in 200 for about 2 to 3 days. That's all. Just during the period of challenge. So I don't know it suits everybody, but it's a good practice that we share. Wasn't my idea, this is a farmer's idea. But Cairo Poultry said I could share it, and I do. The next example came from JSB in Brazil. So what they found was, in the breeder flock, of course the breeder flock is in the house for a long time. So the warm air is rising. They were finding that they were getting bioaerosols and even biofilm forming in the top of the house. So through the misting line, they're using the Neogen peroxide super on a regular basis every 2 weeks. Low dilution, up to 1 in 500. Low dilution every 2 weeks, and they are stopping the formation of the biofilm and reducing the circulatory challenge. Again, that's just one example from one breeding company in Brazil. But they allow me to share because I go to the farms there. And I think it's worth sharing because it's a really nice idea. We do it with the thermal fogging. For the first 10 days, we have this protection. But it doesn't last longer than that. This will give us protection where we have misting lines going forward. This is just an example of older birds. Again, this is from Brazil. Above the birds, even in these open houses, there's not too much a display of wind. As you can see, this is an older flock. They're curious, but no harm. So the final one I want to show you really is in the waterline itself. You've been applied, antibiotics, minerals, vitamins, probiotics. Probiotic is very popular these days for competitive inclusion, some ways of reducing challenge, but we are putting a lot of product through the waterline. How do we moderate the risk of biofilm? You can use an organic acid like citric acid because you want to give some benefit to the birds. Increase water intakes from organic acids, reduce the replication of biofilm, but it's not sanitizing. So if your water source is challenged, so if you consider your water source may have a bacteria, maybe E. coli, maybe salmonella, could be something in the waterline. If it's coming from a reservoir, could even be even influenza because the bird defecation. If you've got that type of challenge, we could use the Neogen peroxide super at 1 to 1,000 to 1 to 2,000. Very low dilution. Why low dilution? Because you're in constant contact with the water. So the normal dilution, 1% or 0.5%, is because you're on a surface and the surface dries, non-residual. When you're inside the waterline, you're in constant contact. So this means the hypochlorous acid chemistry can inactivate the challenge in that period of about 30 minutes. What can really help is if it's after a coccidiosis challenge, because you've had challenge to the villi of the birds. So the organic acid, whether you've used citric before or lactic, we have malic acid in the Neogen peroxide super, has the same benefit. So we're normally thinking about the first week of life. When the water flow is very slow, you put several things in the water. You cannot use for 48 hours after a vaccine, 24 hours after an antibiotic, because we don't want any interference. It's unlikely, but we don't want any interference and we don't want to be blamed. So we say not 48 hours after vaccine and not 24 hours after an antibiotic. But the rest of the time, after probiotics, it's a gram-positive bacteria, so we're not affecting that. It's not pH sensitive. But again, anything going into the waterline 24 hours after, use peroxide super 1 to 1,000 just for 1 day, just 8 hours, just 6 hours. You will stop the biofilm buildup. All we want to do is stop the biofilm buildup and sanitize, stabilize the waterline. So not difficult. We make up a solution, make up around 5% solution, dose at 2%, you get 1 to 1,000. So quite easy to do. You've got dosatrons, you've got all the equipment that's necessary. Do you need a break? No? You always say no. You're not the customer. Okay.
I am a customer.
Oh, you are a customer. Okay. So I have to do a little bit of the commercial side now, which is not my. This is normally my father does that, but I'm doing it today. Just talk a little bit about the products, because we have a peroxide super, and I think if you've seen it, I'm going to pass it around in a moment. This is a powder product. Smells of apple, and I'll let you have a sample in a minute. I got my water here. Won't be a second. They treat me like a circus clown here. So this is 500 ml, and that is 2.5. So we have 1 in 200 dilution. The first thing to notice, obviously, it's green. Surprise, surprise, with Neogen. Everything is green in Neogen. And that is the level of surfactant that we have. So we have a 13% surfactant. The purpose of that is to give you the contact time on the surface. Now we're just going to wait while that settles, because when that settles and it's clear, it's ready to cook, which will happen just while I'm talking, and then I will pass it around. So we have the Neogen peroxide super. It's green. We mixed it as I suggested. After 1 day, that will be yellow. It's still perfectly good to use for 3 to 4 days. We have the data and we have the tests. Why does it go yellow? To make green, you need blue and yellow. The blue dye is not stable in oxidative chemistry, so it drops very quickly, leaves us the yellow. It's a food grade dye. Again, that's why we can use it in organic status. So it's a food grade dye, but it does go this yellowy color. Don't throw it away. 3 to 4 days. We have some test strips. We're waiting for another batch because unfortunately they were coming from a country called Russia. And at the moment we're not allowed to buy anything from a country called Russia in England. So we have a new supplier and we'll have those soon. And you can test very easily that the product is still valid. What is it? 50% monoposulfate. Why 50%? Whenever you make a powder product, if you can imagine, every scoop, every little scoop, we need to have 100% homogeneous product. So you have to have the right balance of each ingredient, otherwise you don't have stability. If you open a pack, and you'll have experience in a minute, and you smell chlorine, it means there is no stability. And if you've had some of the products available here in Pakistan, the one, I should mention it perhaps, the one I had when I was here last time, 2019 in Islamabad, was a product called Foxygen. I don't know if you've experienced it. If you open the pack, stand back. The chlorine smell coming from this pack is so bad that it's really reacting. And why? Because they put 60% monoposulfate. You can't put 60% because there isn't enough ingredient to balance. 50 is the maximum. Some companies put 52, but it's a 96% grade. So actually it's only 50%. So anybody putting more than 50% is a marketing tool to say, oh, we have more biocide. Okay, but it's not working very well. So 50% is probably where you can go. Then the sodium hexametaphosphate is the hard water stabilizer. So we test the product at 1 in 400 ppm, and at Dr. Saddam's request, 1 in 3000 ppm, and the same efficacy, because we have two chelators. We have the sodium hexametaphosphate and malic acid. Both of them are chelators. This one for magnesium and calcium, and this one for iron.
You need to say that because you tested the product 1 ratio 3000 ppm, it means that you want to convey that water hardness level does not affect the efficacy of...
Up to 1 in 3000, no.
Yeah.
Above that, I haven't tested, but up to 1 in 3000, not.
But if water does not contain hardness, then so...
We can use less. So it's a good question, doctor, because in Vietnam, we have soft water, 150 ppm. Japan, 50 ppm. The southern states of the USA, also soft water. There, the recommended dilution is 1 in 300. So we tested in the softer water, we can use a lower dilution because there is no contest on the chemistry. We haven't exhausted
at our
any.
farms, we have our plants, so
Yes, so you could use a lower dilution, yes. Doctor can let you have the 1 in 300 data because I did it for different country. I didn't bring it here.
okay.
I never imagined, because he asked me 3,000, that you have less than. So yeah, you can use a lower dilution because there is no contest on the chemistry. But you need to have water hardness factors in all the chemistries, not just this particular one. Oh, sorry. I thought he was asking me something. The unique product in Neogen peroxide super, which is why, yep, that's already clear in less than 5 minutes, because we put a solubilizer. It's not an effervescent, because that would excite the chemistry. It's actually a solubilizer. It's the only ingredient I'm not allowed to tell you what it is. So we just call it a decahydrate. The rest of it, you can see what it is. That one is intellectual property. So because it's unique, I can't tell you what it is. Or the value, how much it is. So we have the, as I mentioned to you before, we have the surfactant. We have a little bit of salt. Salt thickens the surfactant. If any of you cook, salt thickens the surfactant. Sulfamic is exactly 5%. Why 5%? Because 50% monoposulfate needs 5% to stabilize and create the chemistry. If you have 60%, 5% doesn't work. So if you put 60% here, it means there is 10% less somewhere else. So you can't have a stable product. It's as simple as that. So you need to have the reaction. Why? I'll jump that one. Why? Because we want to form the hypochlorous acid. So to form the hypochlorous acid, we must have the correct blend of chemistry. What happened is, so 50% is the monoposulfate. This goes into the water, and as you saw, it reacts. The 5% sulfamic forms chloral sulfamic acid equals hypochlorous acid. So this now is hypochlorous acid with a color and a fragrance. That's what's in the pack. Hypochlorous acid. Why is hypochlorous acid important? Because it's 80 to 100 times more powerful than bleach, which is hypochlorite. So hypochlorite working at a neutral pH is good chemistry. It's not bad chemistry. Bleach, we use it at home. The wife very happy, 99.9% germs dead. It means by the time you go from the kitchen to the dining room and come back, the bacteria grew in 20 minutes. There is as many bacteria as when she started, but don't tell her, 99.9, she's very happy. So she's using the bleach. And I can't afford to use this at home, so we don't use the hypochlorous. But the hypochlorous acid with the malic acid is giving us this lovely pH balance, and hypochlorous acid penetrates the membrane. Hypochlorite cannot. This is what gives us the fast action killing. This was the 3000 ppm data I explained you. And we have huge amount of data. I won't go into this one by one, but it's on the brochures, all the testing that we've done so far, and the virus. Neogen peroxide super it's a mouthful. We call it NVS. Why? Because when tested, no virus survives. So it's very simple for us. This is a viricide. Does it kill bacteria? Yes. Does it kill fungus? Yes. But essentially, it's a viricide product in our portfolio. Environmentally friendly, great for organic status, great if you're using it in the presence of birds. No challenge for people. Because when we have a cut, our body produces hypochlorous acid. So it's the same. The only thing that can harm a person in the product is the surfactant. So if you have, I'm not recommending this, but if you do put it through showers, you must do skin sensitivity trials. I have to say that because several companies are putting it through showers for the workers at 1 to 1,000. You must do skin sensitivity trial. But will it work? Yes. But it has the hypochlorous acid, and of course, the body, we also have malic acid. So it's a very user-friendly type of chemistry. You know where we're using it, and I showed you those things. We have copy products. We are not a copy, we are an innovative chemistry. Partly true, partly copy, partly innovative, to be honest. Because I worked with Virkon for 30 years, until they changed the formula in 2021. Then, when they reduced the specification, then I retired. Then I came back to work. There's a product on the market when I came last time called Vemicon. Vemicon is from Vietnam. In Vietnam last year, I sold 420 tons of Neogen peroxide super. So my philosophy is, if that was so good, why the Vietnamese don't buy it? Just a thought, but it's not containing the 50% monoposulfate. Neogen peroxide super is higher, with a 98% purity. And they are 500 grams of 96% purity. So it's a different type of product. But it's not bad chemistry. It's just some is better than others. It's not bad. But we have the solubilizer they don't have. And I mentioned before the Foxygen. Foxygen, 60% monoposulfate. It's not stable. It's just the wrong chemistry. I'm sure they know, but anyway, it's up to them. Oh, what they did do, if you notice, only 3% malic acid. So ours has 10%. So this is where some of that extra 10% come. So the stability is completely changed. I wanted to show you this because before Virkon changed the formula, this was 1 in 100 for Salmonella enteriditis on the DEFRA website. DEFRA website, anybody can look, all available. I just double checked in July. All these are monoposulfate type chemistries with different values of KMPS. Neogen peroxide super on the DEFRA website, 1% for Salmonella enteriditis, 15 to 51% less in use than the other chemistries. I think the solubilizer makes a big difference, but because the Virkon changed its formula, that's why it slipped. It used to be 1 in 100. In 2021, DEFRA retested, it's now 1 in 80. They increased their envelope virus because it's easy to do, but they weren't able to change that. So we mentioned the Shore Clean before. We have iodines. Iodines are not all the same. We have a 2.8% iodine, useful in the water lines. I don't know if you use that or not. Very much of a commodity type chemistry, but we have the data to support 3 to 4 log reductions when you're using it in the water line. So I think it's good. Plus, we actually manufacture at 3 because iodine degenerates over 24 months. So after 24 months, the two-year shelf life of the pack, it's 2.8. So we start at 3. So if you bought a new product, it should be even better dilution. The Black Extreme, really a good chemistry. The name sounds like an old black fluid, which I don't think is good from a marketing aspect, but it's really robust chemistry. Good in direct sunlight, so for wheel dips. Good if you've got a short turnaround. Good if you want to do a rotation of chemistry. Good for boot dips. We have the good data supporting that 1 in 200 dilution. Even up to 1 in 400, we have nice data, but we recommend 1 in 200 dilution. This now is just arrived. I think you have samples of the farm fluid. The farm fluid is very similar, but reformulated. Why? Because we have the coccidiosis challenge. So the coccidiosis challenge, this reformulation has given us, I'll jump to that, the 100% inactivation of the 3 key field strains of coccidiosis. There's only one country in Europe where you can get field strain, where you're still allowed to take from live animals, which is Belgium. So we tested in Belgium at a company called Pulfarm. 3 tests. We did 2 trials, July and December, to make sure we have a replication, because you can't just rely on one test. And so in the 10 different tests, you can see there was a slightly different reaction, but at the same point for 100% kill. So very important from that. Synergize is for hatchery. You could use in the farm, yes, but it's specifically designed really from a hatchery point of view because it has a lovely foam to go on the walls. It's 4 quaternaries and a little bit of glutaraldehyde, 7% glutaraldehyde. So this really, and you'll see from the data that we have a lot of bacteria, a lot of fungus data. This is more specifically for the hatchery environment. And then the Variquat 300, glutaraldehyde quaternary. This is, again, the data is there. I think you know a lot about this type of chemistry, but this is best in class according to DEFRA. So the other products, Omnicide, I would have used Omnicide many years ago. This is not a bad product, but it's less efficient than the Variquat 300. We call it best in class because of the DEFRA testing. And remember, the DEFRA testing is in cold condition. So even if you're using that morning or night in Lahore, Islamabad, you're still going to get that level of data. So my story really is pathogen, the pathogen control program. Write down what the pathogens are. There is no chemistry, whether it's from DMG, whether it's from Zoetis, whether it's from whomever, that kills all the pathogen. No one chemistry can do that. So we need to know which one we are trying to kill in which circumstance. If it's a vehicle, if it's a foot dip, if it's a breeder farm, a layer farm, or a broiler farm, we need to be quite specific where we are trying to make that challenge. Then we can design the program together, whichever area that's for. Thank you for your attention. You can now, if you want to, pass this around. Don't go because it's a powder, it'll do, but that smells of apple and that smells of apple. Just so you can have a look, feel. Please feel free to pass it around. And if anybody has a question, I will hope after 3. But it depends on the first knockdown, how the severity of the challenge. Because all we really need to do with the coccidia challenge is not, when I said use 2 disinfection, we don't need to do the whole house 2 disinfection. But the coccidia, really, we're thinking about the floor, maybe ½ a meter of the wall, and if you have posts. So we do the whole house with Neogen peroxide super, then only the floor and the small walls with a 2% farm fluid I would use. This is very economical in use. You're not using 2 full disinfections, you're only using 1.5 effectively. And then that will give you the knockdown. If it was a persistent problem, you might need to do 2 cycles in a row, then leave 3. But otherwise, every 3rd cycle should be enough if you understand where the challenge is coming from. Because once we knock it down, it should be quite okay. Unless you come from another farm with a piece of equipment or something, blah, blah, blah. So, but yeah, so only think about the concentrated areas.
As a cooling pad disinfectant also, just if a farm faces a viral problem or...
Yeah, the example was very nice, but at the end of the cycle, I would typically use an acid detergent to get rid of any calcium, so we improve the airflow. Then it's only if we get a challenge would I think about putting peroxide super through. But they prove it works, so I'm passing on the experience. I would only do it in a challenge, because it's not cheap, because you're going to have to top it up for 2 to 3 days.
Okay.